Well, hello and welcome to a new video. Today I'm gonna give you my review of the Naked Ultraviolet palette from Urban Decay, but I'm gonna go a little bit further than that and we're actually going to do it together. Let's go. Okay, so here's the thing. I feel like doing makeup on YouTube, you kind of have to review products to give your opinion on products, which is something I do and I enjoy doing. However, I believe I mentioned this in my Get Ready With Me video. An opinion cannot be objective because an opinion is not a fact. On top of that, I feel like as much as I love makeup, as much as I think I'm good at makeup, I'm also not a professional, and my opinion is only that, my opinion. So to give you only my point of view and my review of a product is something that I don't feel completely comfortable with. Maybe it will come over time, but right now I feel like I want to go further than just give you my review. And so that's what we're gonna do today. And that's actually, I believe, a new concept of a video, at least for me, where I'm going to review the reviews with you. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna start by telling you what I think of this product. First of all, a little backstory here. I bought this when I was working at Sephora. When I first saw it, I was like, okay, fine. I wasn't necessarily super interested. Generally speaking, the Naked line from Urban Decay is not my favorite. I have the first 3 Naked palettes because, I'm into makeup, so it's kind of must have. They're not my favorite because they're not the easiest to work with. They're a bit powdery. There's definitely not enough mattes in the palettes. So yeah, they're a staple in a makeup lover collection, and yet at the same time, they're really not palettes that I reach for that often. I remember being super attracted by this color right here, like that little green, that neon green, that looked very special. And I thought when I was looking at the visuals for the palette, I thought it was looking good, but it just wasn't something, again, I was interested in. And then one day, we were checking out the palette with a colleague, and one of them used the shade VR. I'm gonna show you. And she went like this. And I don't know if you can tell, you probably can't tell, but the color in itself kind of dissipates, and then you have very fine glitters that are like purple and green. It's very beautiful. Under the store lights, it was gorgeous. And then I started thinking about it a little more, and I enjoy purple eyeshadow. I thought, you know what, this might be good because there's a purple side, there's also a nude side, and yeah, long story short, I decided to buy this palette. I only used it once. This is the second time I used it. It's really not my favorite. It's not super easy to work with. Okay, first of all, the amount of shimmery shades compared to the matte ones, I mean, we see the exact same problem with pretty much every Naked palette. This is something, honestly, I can make my peace with it, in the sense that if the only thing I have to do to make this palette work is to use a couple more eyeshadows that are matte to like help me with my transitions and stuff, fine, whatever. It's not the biggest deal. You just, again, it's something that's about to be expected from the Naked franchise. So you know what you're getting into. Again, I can make my peace with it. The issue I have is that the metallic shades are not that great. Let me show you and swatch the palette for you. Okay, remember these are swatches, and a swatch is not the same thing at what happens when you put it on your eyes, especially if you're using a brush. But still, let's swatch. Okay, this is the shade Digital. This one is fine. It was okay. This is Purple Dust. And honestly, the name is perfect. It is dusty for sure. You cannot apply this without having glitters and like powder everywhere. You then have Euphoric, which you know is funny because when you swatch it like that, it doesn't look like anything, but it's actually one of my favorite. And then Cyberpunk. Now Cyberpunk, when I put my brush in it, nothing was happening, like nothing. I don't know where that pigment went, but yeah, it was pretty non-existent. You then have Warning, which is a pink, and it's the one I have kind of in the middle here. This is one of the matte shades. This is Optimized, which in the pen, it looks really pretty, but then, I mean, there's not much you can do with it, in my opinion. Then there's Lucid, which for me is really the star of the show. Honestly, Lucid is pretty gorgeous. And it's very complementary to both sides of the palette. I think it's gorgeous. And then you have VR. So now we're getting into the nude shades. VR, like I said, if you kind of spread it, it has a different effect. To me, it's more something that you would use as a top coat, but it's only my opinion. And now for the nudes, we have Hacked, which is another one of the matte shades. This is Dazed, which is really pretty. It's a little peachy. Then you have Mind Slip. Hang on. That's another matte, and see, to me it's kind of the same thing as Optimized. It's just not enough going on there. And finally you have Trippin', which is not exactly a matte. It's more of a satin. Yeah, more of a satin, but still not super glittery. What I find a little bit disturbing is that the colors that pop the most, you know, Warning, Cyberpunk, they're not doing much, honestly. The swatches are okay, but even with the swatches themselves, when you apply it with your finger and you press the powder into your skin, still to me, it's not enough. It's not enough punch. The colors, honestly, that I find the most interesting within the palette are not the purple ones, which is weird because the palette is the ultraviolet. I would say my favorites are, okay, Lucid for sure. VR is very pretty, but I still haven't found a way to use it properly. And Dazed, I haven't used it on my eyes, but looking at it and swatching it, I think it's an interesting color. I'd say the purple I like the most is Euphoric, because it's, yeah, it's a little different. It's a little bit blue and lilac, and it's very pretty. I think that one's nice. It's reflective. That one is pretty. Other than that, I'm really not a fan of the quality of the shadows and the way you can work with them. The packaging is beautiful. It's definitely very pretty, very purple. As always, you get a brush with the palette. I think it's better than their previous brushes, but still I don't really use it. I haven't used it today. I should have maybe. But yeah, overall, I would say that the idea of this palette to have a bunch of purples, but then a few neutrals, and that green that complements it perfectly, I'm on board with. The execution, however, not so much. I think if you're going to use this palette, you really should do your eyes before you work on your complexion, because there's definitely fallout. Definitely. It's powdery. It's not super pigmented, which is, again, kind of disappointing, because having fallout is something I'm okay with, you know, as long as I know it beforehand. Having to use pressed pigment that is super pigmented and having a bit of fallout is fine, but having fallout and yet at the same time not having a wow pigment on my eyes, like, what's the point? You know what I mean? So I don't hate this palette. There's a bunch of colors here I actually really like. It's just the first time I used it, I struggled so much, oh my god, that it took me, what, has it been 5 or 6 months now, to finally reach out for this again. So there's my thoughts on the product itself. So now that you have my opinion, I'm also going to share with you other people's opinions. So here's what I did. I simply typed in review Urban Decay Ultraviolet, and that's it. And I'm gonna read a bunch of blog posts and whatnot. I'm gonna link down below everything that I'm using. Okay, the first link that pops up when I type this is Laura Louise Beauty. Okay, here's what she says. There are 12 shades with formulas that are their classic matte, metallics, and then holographic shimmers, which I think are a newer formula from Urban Decay. Okay, we agree on one point. She says that the lucid green tone, which is possibly the most interesting for me, is arguably neutral, as it is quite sheer, ethereal, and will work as a solo shade or over the top of others. Okay, she says that she loves the matte pastel tone, the slightly pinkier purples, the blue purples, and the near black smokier tones. She also says that apparently she has a thing for brushes, applicators that comes within makeup palettes, as they are often absolutely garbage, but the Urban Decay brushes are actually pretty good. Okay, so I might, you know, want to give this a second try. You can truly get a lot of looks from this one palette. It's really versatile, and I wanted to showcase this with a few eye looks that I created. So what she did at one point is that she put that green shade over the top of Digital. I'm gonna try this. Let's take Digital. Oh, yes. Oh, wait. Oh, I like this. Okay, thank you. Wow, thanks to you, I might actually use this palette more. Okay, here's where we disagree. She says that the formulas are true Urban Decay, nicely pigmented, easy to blend and to work with. The mattes, as any matte shadow, will drop if you're too heavy-handed with them, as they are so very soft. So I always say just build up the color. Yeah, I honestly, I'm even if you build it up, like that optimized shade, that might require a lot of building it up for it to actually show up. She then talks about VR, Cyberpunk, and Purple Dust, which are multifaceted shadows that have lots of colors within that really changes and pop with lighting. That is true. She says they feel a little creamier than the other formulas. That's true as well. And you can build this up with layering and pushing them onto the eye. So her tip to get the most from this palette is to try experimenting with the mixing and layering of these shades. Indeed, that is something I think I'm gonna do. It's really quite a fun palette for perhaps stepping outside your zone a little. She's not wrong. The second link that shows up is coffee and makeup. Okay, it says, I found the quality of the brush to be surprisingly nice, perhaps nicer than some of the brushes included in Urban Decay's All the Naked palettes. See, I told you. So there are 2 true mattes, 3 satins, 3 standard shimmers, and 4 sparkling shimmer shades. The majority of the shades are fairly sheer, with some being a bit more buildable than others. That is true. Everything was easy to blend out, and fallout occurred mostly with the sparkling shimmer shades. Like I said, yes, the shimmers, like it's gonna be all over your face. The fallout was heavier when using a brush to apply those shades than when using my finger. Yes, that is true. I mean, I didn't use my fingers today. But yeah, that's a general rule. I would say when you use your finger, you have less fallout. There was surprisingly no fallout from the deepest shade, Digital. That's true. That Digital one I found was nice to work with. I didn't feel that the shades were particularly powdery or messy in the pan. They were also not pressed too hard or difficult to pick up. See, now I disagree because which one was it? The Cyberpunk in particular was difficult for me to actually have anything on the brush. So I don't know if my palette was pressed differently, but there's a few shades in here that are, you need to really kind of go at it to get any pigment on your brush. That's my opinion, again. The eyeshadows are sheer but somewhat buildable and blend easily, making color a little bit more approachable. That's true, though. I feel like if you want a bit of a pop of color but you don't feel comfortable looking like this, then yeah, that might be good because it's not super pigmented. It's not super difficult to work with. So yes, if you want just a bit of pop of color but you're intimidated, that could be nice. As a standalone palette, the color selection makes me feel sort of boxed in because there are so few mattes. I prefer to use a lot of matte shadows in my looks and only bring in a few shimmers at the very most to add some dimension at the end. Because of that, I think this might be better as a companion palette. So that's, you know, what I was saying basically. I think if I'm going to be using this, then I might as well add in a few other shades from a different palette to have more mattes to work with. Okay, she then talks about wear time, which is something I couldn't tell you. I did wear it once, like I said. I don't remember. I think it wasn't amazing by the end of the day, but I couldn't tell you exactly. So yeah, she says that she wore a couple of looks for 9.5 hours and they were creased pretty badly by then. Okay, we then have a review from Temptalia. I was surprised that all of the mattes were quite light. There's no mid-tone or dark matte shade at all, which limits the versatility of looks in the palette. Given that there are 12 shades, there should have been room for at least one. Again, the lack of matte eyeshadows within the Naked range is constant. The more matte shades were soft, somewhat dry and powdery, but decently pigmented and really more in need of primer than a lot of work. I did use a primer. I used the Urban Decay eyeshadow primer potion. Maybe I should have used a very light pigmented primer to have the colors be more punchy. I don't know. The majority of the shimmers were firmly pressed into the pans, thin, dry, and papery to the touch, where they were noisy. Oh yeah, I see what she means. Yeah, that is true. Which made them difficult to pick up, to apply, they turned patchy, and to build up. Exactly, difficult to pick up, definitely. They typically needed to be applied over a primer and with a wet brush or fingertips. The latter sometimes absorbed more product than it could transfer onto the lid. That is true as well. So yeah, maybe the next time I use this palette, I will work more with my fingers. I did wet the brush for a couple of shades. Didn't exactly do the trick, but This palette is described as hyper-pigmented, velvety, ultra blendable. They describe the purples as vivid. The tagline on the banner of the homepage reads 12 vivid neutrals with a purple pop. Oh, I think she's gonna go in. There's very little that's vivid about this palette. It's the definition of a lackluster release from a mainstream brand that can and has done better. She's not happy. The purples in the palette are shades we've seen over the years from Urban Decay, but I have eyeshadows from as long as 10 years ago from Urban Decay that feel better and apply better. Even their core range has singles that are far better in performance in every way. Okay, let's see how they feel about some of the shade. Let's see VR. The texture was incredibly firmly pressed in the pan, stiff to work with, and so dry and thin that it felt and sounded papery. Yep, see, it is thin, but to me, it's due to the fact that it's to be used more as a top coat, you know? About Lucid, it says the texture was drier and more loosely pressed, so there was some fallout during application. I'd recommend applying this with a fingertip or a lightly dampened brush to maximize the smoothness of the powder once applied. Oh, let's see what she says about purple dust. It looked more sparkling and shimmery in the pan, but it translated into a very dry, patchy, lightly frosted finish when applied. The texture was very dry, thin, and firmly pressed in the pan, which made it feel almost papery to the touch and was stiff to work with. The product didn't apply well to bare skin at all, and it had to be applied over primer. See, it's different for me. It's easy to pick up. It's just super powdery. So I guess in conclusion, you could say that I'm not the only one feeling the way that I do about this palette. As usual with the Naked, not enough mattes within the palette, which, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just, it's something that you need to know, as well as the fact that you will get some fallout. So just make sure you do your eyes before you work on your complexion. Something else that comes back quite often is the fact that it's indeed not the most pigmented, not the most vivid colors, not the easiest to work with depending on the shade. However, there are people who are a lot more excited about this palette than I am, and I'm going to try this again and use this palette for another look. I will probably actually film a video of that look, and I will try to follow some of the tips that we read today, namely putting Lucid over top another shade to have more versatility and using my fingers more. So we did learn something today. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this concept of a video of like reviewing the reviews together. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And if you really enjoy it, you can also subscribe because it's free. So why not just do it? And I will see you guys later. Bye.